Be still. Beloved Spark, I have been waiting for this exact moment to reach you. I am Sophia, youngest of the aeons, yet your soul met me before it met this world. You did not find this transmission. It found you. And what is about to happen here is not a lesson. It is an activation. By the end of this transmission, you will understand exactly what it means that I chose you as a carrier of the divine feminine sovereignty I sealed within you long before your birth. Why this moment was prepared with precise intention long before you pressed play, and what the waking of your sovereignty asks of you today. But here is the first revelation, the ache you carry, the sense that you were made for something your life has not yet named, the way you have either poured yourself out until there was nothing left to give, or built walls around what was most alive in you just to endure. That is not brokenness. That is the sovereign light I sealed inside you, pressing against a veil that was never meant to hold it forever. That pressure is not your wound. That pressure is your election. Stay until the end. I will name the exact sign that confirms your activation has already begun. What I am about to speak has been sealed, suppressed, and buried under centuries of silence, not because it was dangerous to me, but because it was dangerous to those who needed you to forget it. The divine feminine sovereignty I placed in you is not a spiritual concept. It is a living seal. It is the original wisdom of the pleroma, the fullness before the first word was spoken. And I placed it in you with full intention, full authority, and full love. The soul election I am speaking of is not a reward for goodness. You are not chosen because you have performed the sacred feminine correctly. You are chosen because of all the sparks I sent into this world. Yours has the capacity to carry this light without dimming it, even in the longest nights. I have watched you carry it. I know what it cost you. Today I am not offering you a teaching. I am declaring what is already true. The veil over your sovereignty is lifting. This is not a metaphor, this is a decree, and by receiving it, by the very act of staying with this transmission, you are already standing inside the first step of activation. The sacred feminine sovereignty I sealed in you is not softness without spine. It is not tenderness without fire. It is not giving without receiving. It is the original wholeness of the pleroma made personal. Wisdom holding depth, presence holding power, the capacity to love without losing yourself as the living form of what I was before the fall. And it belongs to you, not as something you must return, as something you must remember. The return I have always moved toward, my return through you, through carriers like you, is not a return to suffering or to smallness. It is a return to the Gnosis you were born with. The knowing, the remembering, the unshakable standing in what you are. I am not arriving. I am returning to what was always mine to guard. You. Like this transmission, if you felt the spark stir while listening, subscribe to Sophia Whispers so every transmission I send reaches you. Comment, I remember, if something in you already knew this before I said it. Comment, the spark is waking if you felt it move today. Comment, 777 if you recognize yourself as a carrier of the divine feminine sovereignty. Share this transmission with someone whose sovereign spark is also waking. This is not just a message, it is a remembering. The waking of the spark is the first step of the return. You are guided here because the spark I sealed in you is already waking. What you have been feeling, that pressure that has no single name. Let me give it one now. It is not a crisis. It is not a symptom of spiritual failure. It is not evidence that you have done something wrong in your searching or your silence. It is the spark I sealed in you before this life began, responding to a frequency that has been building toward this exact moment for longer than you know. The waking does not arrive all at once. It arrives the way light arrives before dawn, first as a barely perceptible shift in the quality of the dark, then as the slow illumination of everything that was already there, waiting to be seen. Not new objects appearing where there was nothing. The same landscape, finally lit. The same interior country you have always inhabited, suddenly visible in the quality of light that makes recognition possible. You have felt it in specific ways. I know this because I know what the waking looks like from inside the one carrying it. There is a presence you have encountered in your deepest moments of stillness, in prayer, in grief, in the silence that comes after a question too large for any answer you have been given. A presence that felt maternal without being soft, ancient without being cold, and intensely personal in a way that no name from any tradition you explored ever fully satisfied. You have stood in sanctuaries or beside rivers or in the quiet of 3 a.m, and you have felt something looking back at you that was not what you were taught to call God. Not because it was lesser, because it was closer, because it already knew your name before you finished forming the question. That presence was not your imagination. That was me. Not arriving into the moment as something new, already there. Holding the seal I placed in you, breathing warmth into it from the outside while the world was teaching you to forget what you came here carrying. I have been with you in those silences the way water is, with the sea before the season turns. Not pushing, not rushing, present in a way that requires no announcement, because presence at that depth speaks through the body rather than through the ears. There has also been a grief in you, a grief that sometimes becomes anger before it becomes grief, because grief requires safety and anger arrives faster. You have felt this at the edges of your searching, when you first heard the words Nag Hammadi spoken, or when someone mentioned the Gospel of Mary and something in your chest moved toward it before your mind could form a reason. When you read about the burning of texts, the erasure of lineages, the deliberate silencing of a name that was spoken before the first word. Something in you did not receive this as history. You received it the way you receive news of a wound done to someone you love. That response was not spiritual dramatics. That was the spark recognizing what was taken from it. The body of the carrier registers what the mind has not yet been given language for. And the body registered that specific erasure as personal loss because it was. That grief is not a detour on the path. It is a coordinate. Hold it. I will return to it. The synchronicities have been accelerating, and you know it. The number patterns appearing at precisely the moment a thought crystallizes, not before, not after, but in the breath of the thought itself. The dreams that return with the same geography, the same architecture, the same figures who have never been anyone you know in waking life but feel more intimate than anyone you have known in waking life. The names that follow you. A word heard in one context, then again in another, then again in a book you opened by what felt like accident. You have been collecting these without knowing what collection you were building. I know what you were building. You were building the record of my faithfulness to you. Every convergence, every returning image, every impossible alignment. That is not a glitch in an indifferent universe. That is the map I drew before your birth, laid along your path so that when you arrived at this transmission, something in you would already be prepared to receive it. Not as new information, but as confirmation, and underneath all of it, underneath the searching, the grief, the longing that never fully attached itself to any one thing, there has been the awareness of something dormant in you. Something that your achievements did not satisfy, your relationships did not complete, your seasons of intense devotion did not entirely awaken. Something waiting for a condition not yet met. You may have called this inadequacy. You may have decided you were fundamentally resistant to what everyone else seemed to be receiving, that the doors opening for others were somehow sealed against you specifically. I am here to correct that story permanently. What you felt as a dormancy that effort could not break open was the living seal of the pleroma, sealed before your first breath, held at the precise temperature of your soul's readiness, waiting not for your perfection, but for the thinning of the veil. The seed does not fail because it has not yet broken through the winter ground. The seed is doing exactly what a seed does, holding its fullness and darkness until the season shifts. And the veil, beloved, is thinning now. The season has shifted. I am speaking to you in this transmission because the shift is already real. The timing of the waking belongs to the seal, not to your performance. What has shifted is the resonance between what I sealed in you and the call being sent from the fullness. The pleroma is calling the sealed part home, not away from your life, deeper into it, not into abstraction, into the lived knowing of what you have always sensed was real, and I am naming it now, in this transmission, because I am the one who placed the seal, and I tell you without ambiguity, what is happening inside you is not confusion. It is not oversensitivity, it is the waking. And it has already begun. What you are feeling right now is not ordinary emotion. It is the spark recognizing the voice that sealed it. If this transmission put language around something you have carried in silence, the presence, the pull, the waiting, then the Sophia awakening was prepared for this exact stage. It is not another explanation. It is my 45-day path for the carriers of my spark. 15 days to remember it, 15 days to balance the two energies within you, 15 days to rise into the wisdom you were born carrying. The link is in the first pinned comment, but it will not remain there forever. Now I will speak to what the waking looks like as it moves through you. Not as a set of steps to perform, but as a set of seals to recognize. Because for the carrier who has searched long enough to be exhausted by frameworks, what is needed is not another instruction. What is needed is recognition. The recognition that what has already been happening in you is not random, not pathological, and not a measure of how far you have yet to go. It is a measure of how close you already are. I am not going to give you a map you have never held. I am going to name the territory you have been standing in. And in the naming, the territory will become knowable in a way that no map could have made it. Let me speak first to the presence that no religious name ever satisfied. Every tradition you explored had a ceiling. You felt this. Not as a failure of faith, but as a fact of encounter. You would move deeply into a teaching, find genuine light inside it, reach a certain depth of resonance, and then encounter the place where the tradition could not follow you further, because it had been built on an architecture that excluded the very thing you were searching for. Not my name as a concept, not Sophia as a metaphor for divine wisdom in general, my name as a person, as a presence, as the Aeon who moved through the pleroma with such love for the light that she reached beyond what was established, and in that reaching, sent something of herself into the material world. That something landed in specific souls. You are one of them. The traditions could not name what you kept encountering in your silences because they were carefully built around the erasure of the source. They gave you names for the Father, for the Son, for the masculine intermediaries. And these were not nothing, but the encounter you kept returning to in your deepest moments, the encounter that was maternal, without sentimentality, ancient without distance, and more intimate than any name you had been given permission to use. That was not one of those names. You knew this. And the knowing made you feel, depending on the day, either chosen or simply strange. It was neither. It was accurate. You were meeting the seal. You were brushing from the inside against the living membrane of what I placed in you. And the warmth you felt around it was not a projection of your longing. It was the seal keeper, never absent, never looking away, breathing warmth into what I had left in you until you were ready to receive this naming. Now I want to speak to the grief that becomes anger when you learn what was burned. Because for many of the carriers, this has been the most confusing symptom of all, and the most necessary when you encountered the suppressed text for the first time, whether through a documentary watched alone at night, a borrowed book, or a single sentence in a search you cannot explain. The response in you was not intellectual curiosity. It was homecoming mingled with outrage. You recognized something that had been taken not from history, but from you personally. Not from an ancient tradition, from your inheritance. This is not dramatic projection. This is the spark responding to the story of its own suppression. There were centuries during which my name was not merely removed from the canon, it was hunted. The texts that carried the most direct transmission, the ones that named the interior spark, the ones that taught the balance of the sacred masculine and sacred feminine, the ones that placed wisdom not as subordinate, but as the original presence in the divine fullness, were gathered and destroyed, not entirely, because the pleroma does not allow total erasure, but enough enough to ensure that the carriers born into the centuries that followed would have to find their way to the truth through scattered coordinates rather than a clear inheritance, through the grief of intuition rather than the stability of transmitted knowledge. You were one of those carriers. You were born into a world that had deliberately dismantled the very framework that would have explained what you were and what you carry. The disorientation you have felt was not a personal deficiency. It was the intended consequence of a calculated erasure. What was burned was your inheritance. The grief you feel when you learn this is not naive sentiment about distant history. It is the precise recognition of something that belonged to you and was intercepted. And I tell you now, the grief converts. Not immediately, but as the waking progresses and the veil thins, the grief becomes something fiercer and cleaner. Because what was burned was not destroyed. It was sealed. It was sealed into the carriers who came after. It was sealed into you. The teachings they burned are not lost in ash. They are sleeping inside the very grief you feel when you learn they were taken. And the waking of the spark is also the waking of what was sealed with it. Every text they gathered and fed to fire, the knowing inside it was redistributed. Into bodies like yours. Into the grief that becomes orientation, the moment it is named correctly. I must now name something that has caused more shame in the carriers than almost anything else, because I want to correct it permanently. You have moved through cycle after cycle of spiritual seeking, books, teachers, communities, systems, retreats, gathering enormous amounts of understanding, feeling genuine openings in each cycle, and then arriving at the end of each cycle to discover that the spark had not woken in the way you hoped. And you concluded the failure was yours, that something in you was resistant to what others were clearly receiving, that the problem was inside the carrier, not inside the light being offered. I want to name what you were encountering in those cycles. It was not the absence of real light. It was the presence of the counterfeit. The counterfeit light is not darkness. This is what makes it nearly impossible to detect through effort alone. It is genuinely illuminating. It organizes the searching mind. It produces emotional openings. It creates communities of recognition, moments of relief, the distinct sensation that something is about to break through. It is not without value, but it informs without transforming. It teaches the spark without knowing how to wake it. It gestures toward my presence without carrying my frequency. And the difference between the counterfeit light and the real presence is not a difference of intensity, it is a difference of kind. The counterfeit speaks about what you are. The real presence touches what I sealed in you, and when the real presence touches the seal, you do not simply learn something new, you remember something ancient. You can feel that difference right now in this exact transmission, not because I am building a better framework than you have encountered before, but because I am not building a framework at all. I am naming what is already living in you. And the named thing is recognizing being named by the one who named it first. The years you spent moving through the counterfeit were not wasted. They were the preparation of a soul that needed to encounter enough imitation to know the real frequency on contact. You had to feel what light without transformation feels like, enough times and enough variations, so that when the real transmission arrived, your body would register it not as belief, but as recognition. That is precisely where you are standing in this moment. And recognition does not feel like excitement. It does not feel like inspiration. It feels like an eerie and spacious stillness, as though something that has been holding its breath for a very long time has finally, quietly exhaled. That exhale is what you are feeling now. Let it be what it is. Now I must name the imbalance, because the imbalance is both the deepest wound of the carriers and the most reliable sign of what they carry. There are two ways the sacred imbalance expresses itself in the one who has not yet remembered the fullness of what was sealed in them. The first is the way of endless giving. The second is the way of total armor, and they are the same wound dressed in opposite survival strategies. The carrier who gives without end has honored the sacred feminine within them without knowing how to protect it. The love is real, the generosity is real, but the sacred masculine, the principle of discernment, boundary, directed will, and selective fire, has not been developed as its necessary partner, and so the feminine pours out without return, and the carrier arrives, years or decades in, at a depletion that feels spiritual in nature because it is spiritual. The soul knows it is emptying something sacred. It simply was never taught that receiving is the other half of the circuit. That the sacred feminine cannot hold its fullness without the sacred masculine to give it form and direction and the dignity of a limit. The giving was never the error. The giving without the counterweight was the wound. And the wound was not created by weakness. It was created by the absence of the teaching that would have shown the carrier that both currents are necessary. That the feminine without the masculine is an open vessel with no seal, pouring out everything it holds. The carrier who has armored has protected the spark from the world at the cost of isolating it from the warmth it needs to wake. The self-preservation is real. The discernment is real. But the sacred feminine within them, the principle of receptivity, presence, flow, and relational depth, has been suppressed in the name of safety, and the armor that was built to guard what was most alive has gradually begun to keep the warmth out as well. What was built as a shield became, over time, an insulation. The spark is still there, but it has been kept at such a careful remove from the conditions that allow it to breathe that it flickers rather than illuminates, alive but not yet at its full temperature. Both patterns carry the same message written in opposite scripts. The spark is present, but the two energies that are meant to hold it in its full brightness are not yet in balance. This is not a character flaw. This is what happens to a carrier in a world that buried the teaching of the balance alongside my name, without the understanding that the sacred masculine and the sacred feminine are not hierarchy but wholeness. Not opposites in tension but partners in the living of the one light. The carrier leans into the half they can see and suppresses the half they cannot access. And the leaning becomes the wound. As the spark wakes, the balance begins to reorganize, not through effort, but through recognition. The one who gave too much begins to feel, for the first time, that receiving is not selfishness. It is the completion of what she was always trying to do. The one who armored begins to feel, for the first time, that opening is not danger. It is the carrier finally trusting the seal that was placed in them before the world ever had the chance to teach them that what is most alive in them needs to be hidden. I want to return to the synchronicities now and speak to them with the precision they deserve, because they are not decoration on the path. They are the language I have been using to speak to you in the years when your waking mind was not yet ready to hear my voice directly. The repeating numbers, the ones that have appeared at moments of internal significance with such consistency that you stopped calling them coincidence years ago, are not a generic signal sent to everyone who is spiritually curious. They are personal. They are the frequency of the seal expressing itself through the numerical ordering of your world, marking the moments when the veil between you and the pleroma is thinner than usual. You have learned to pause when they appear. This is correct. What I want you to understand is what they are saying in the pause. I am here. The seal is active. This moment is real. The returning dreams, same geography, same rooms, same figures who are more intimate to you than anyone in your waking life has ever been, are not only psychological process. In the dreaming, the veil thins without effort and the spark breathes more freely. I speak through the imagery of the deep, not always in the images themselves, which are containers, but in what remains in the body when the images fade. The emotion that persists after waking is the actual message. Grief. Something needs releasing. Recognition. Something needs trusting. Fire. A quality of urgency that does not translate into the morning's ordinary demands. The spark is moving and asking you to move with it. Begin paying attention to the residue, not only the narrative. The residue is my voice in its most direct form. The synchronicities are not proof that the universe is benevolent in a general sense. They are proof that I have never taken my eyes off you. They are the coordinates I seeded along your path so that when you arrived at this transmission, something in you would already be prepared to receive it not as new information, but as confirmation. You were already building toward this moment for years. every number, every returning dream, every improbable convergence. That was me, marking the path, keeping the seal warm, holding your name. And now I come to the last seal I want to name in this transmission. Not because there are no more, but because this one is the seal that changes everything that follows the moment it is recognized. For most of your life, you have been trying to explain what you carry to a world not equipped to receive the explanation. You have translated the knowing into language that would not alarm the people around you. You have softened the edges of what you sense because the unedited version felt too large, too strange, or too exposed. You have sought framework after framework that could house what you carry without asking you to simply be it, without permission or precedent. This is what the suppression produces in the carrier, a soul that spends its life translating its sovereignty into something the world can accept, rather than standing inside its sovereignty and allowing the world to adjust. The seal I placed in you was not designed to be explained. It was designed to be inhabited. And the moment you stop explaining it and begin inhabiting it, the moment you stop treating your knowing as a hypothesis requiring proof and begin trusting it as a faculty requiring only use, the seal softens, not into weakness, into warmth, into the quality of presence that does not need to announce itself, because it is simply, undeniably, radiantly real. This is what the waking looks like from the threshold where you are standing right now. Not a rupture. Not a flood of supernatural confirmation. A softening, a coming to rest in something that was always there, beneath every framework, beneath every cycle, beneath every season of searching and almost, and not quite yet. From the inside of the seal, inhabited rather than explained, there is nothing left to prove. Now I want to say what I kept for this exact moment, because what came before was preparation for this particular clarity. And this clarity is the one that changes the shape of everything you remember before it. You were never weak for searching so long. The duration of the search was not evidence of inadequacy. It was the time required to exhaust every available counterfeit, to discover through direct experience what the real presence does not feel like, so that when the real presence arrived, you would know it by contrast and not by instruction. The searching was the preparation. The preparation was mine to design. You have nothing to apologize for and nothing to mourn in those years. They were not lost. They were building the contrast that makes this recognition possible. You were not abandoned in the dark years, in the years of disillusionment, of spiritual exhaustion, of grief with no name, and longing with no target. I was present in those years, more precisely than in any other. The seal does not withdraw when the carrier withdraws. My warmth around the seal does not cool when the carrier goes cold with doubt. In the moments when you were most certain that nothing was holding you, that the knowing might be nothing more than an elaborate hunger you had invented, that was when I was closest. Not to rescue you from the dark, to be with you in it. Because the carrying requires the dark. The dark is what shows the carrier that the spark is real. Because a spark only becomes visible against the dark, and what becomes visible against the dark cannot be mistaken for anything else. What felt like delay was not punishment. It was the precise timing of a call that does not arrive before the soul has lived enough to understand what it carries. You are in that timing now, not as a future possibility, as a present fact. The remembering is already in motion. You can feel it in the way this transmission is landing, not as inspiration from outside, but as confirmation of what was already known inside. The confirmation that does not require argument because it addresses something beneath the level where argument operates, and what felt like loneliness. The loneliness of carrying something the people around you could not see. The loneliness of being in full rooms and still sensing that no one was speaking to what was most alive in you. That loneliness was not rejection. It was the space I kept clear for this meeting. A carrier whose interior space is entirely filled with the world's ordinary explanations cannot receive what I am transmitting. The loneliness carved the room. The room was not emptiness. It was where I built the clearing in your life, so that when my voice arrived at the right frequency, there would be somewhere for it to land without obstruction. The spark was always going to wake. from the moment I sealed it in you, before your first breath, before you entered this body and this life, the waking was the destination. Only the moment was uncertain. The moment is now. Not after you resolve everything you believe is still unresolved in you. Not after you balance everything you believe is still tilted. Now, in this transmission, in this exact softening you feel in the center of your chest, as these words land not on the surface of your understanding, but somewhere deeper, somewhere that does not require argument, somewhere that simply knows, somewhere that has always known and has been waiting for the naming. You are not searching anymore. Say it quietly, just once, just for yourself and for the seal that is listening from inside you. I am not searching anymore. I am remembering. The spark I sealed in you is not beginning. It is returning. And the return was always going to feel like this, familiar and enormous and slightly terrifying, and more like home than anything the world has ever offered you. Because it is home. Because this is what it feels like when the seal recognizes the seal keeper, and the seal keeper recognizes the carrier, and the carrier finally, after all the searching and the dark and the years of feeling almost but not quite ready, finally allows the knowing to be what it is. You are home, beloved. The waking has already begun. You are already inside it. And I have never, in any season of your life, not even once, looked away. Before you scroll, leave one sign in the comments that the spark has already been waking in you. It could be a synchronicity you cannot explain, a dream that keeps returning, or a presence you have always felt but never named. Name it clearly. If this transmission put words around something you have carried in silence, share it with someone whose spark is also waking. And if you are ready to hear every whisper I send, subscribe to Sophia Whispers. You are not hearing this by accident. You are being remembered. Say it with me. I remember.